Hey everyone, welcome to Life on Point. This is the video podcast for us at Connection Point Church. You can download this, subscribe to it on the YouTube channel. Also, if you want to listen to the audio version of this, go to the podcast platform of your choice, search and subscribe to my podcast, The Pursuit Podcast with Chris Vault. You can get the audio version. I have a special guest with me today.
My name's Darren Deloach. I am the online/media pastor at Connection Point Church with him.
We're going to have a good time today. This is the beginning of 2023. And, this past year here at the church, we set a theme called The Great Adventure.
Great adventure.
And it really has been. It was a great adventure for us as a church.
Personally,
but as
maybe?
we're going to talk about, as we're going to talk about today, it's also, we found it to be true in our own personal walks with God. The whole idea for this came several years back when I was pastoring in Kentucky, and I had a gentleman in the church, a dear friend of mine, come to me one day, and he has made this statement, just kind of grabbed me. I knew it to be true, but it just grabbed me. He said, faith is a journey, not a destination.
Yep. Facts.
Because I think a lot of times we look at our Christian walk and, hey, we give our lives to Christ, we get baptized, we join a church, we get involved in ministry, boom, we've arrived. And that's really not how Christianity is.
I think most of us are. I think even we as leaders of the church have trained our people to be sprinters, not marathon runners. It's the long run. You got to train different when you run a marathon, and so you got to feed yourself differently. And this is a long haul. It's not you may have got saved at 19 or 25 or whatever, but you got the rest of your life to go.
Yeah.
So if you're running this thing like a sprint, guess what sprinters do?
Yeah.
They run very short distance and they fall and that's what we see a lot.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in our Christian walk, and I think this past year has been a great example, and it's kind of led to the thing we want to set for 2023. That's why we're talking about it today, is because not only for us as a church, we're going to challenge you to also consider a challenge like this for yourself, because we believe that if this is a journey, and with the journey we got highs and lows, we need to be prepared for the long haul of our faith, enduring, staying strong, staying faithful. And to do that, we are going to have to understand what it truly means to be a disciple of Jesus.
Amen. Yep.
And be able to hear the voice of God along the journey.
For yourself.
And so here at the church, our theme this year is hearing the voice of God. We're going to talk about this all year long. All our sermon series are going to be based around how to grow as a disciple and hear the voice of God.
Yep.
And really, coming off of 2022, that's what we were trying to do then. We were looking at the journey of the highs and the lows of walking with the Lord and how to stay faithful. If you're on a mountain peak or you're down in a valley or somewhere in between. Right?
And exactly. And it's the great adventure was the theme. And we had all these, when we name these things, so one of these days we need to name it like something to the nature of bountiful blessing or something. So maybe whenever we speak these things over us, that it won't be quite so foreboding.
It was just a few months ago. We were riding in the car, and my wife looks over at me and says, "Can't you for once declare a sermon series on the prosperity of God, prosperity gospel," which we are not.
We are not. But we
tuned into the prosperity gospel, but
blessings and bountifulness is a thing. It's biblical, but we're not going there. We're going the voice of God. So I'm trying to figure out where it could take us to stretch us the most. And I'm hoping it just means we'll be overran with the voice of the Lord.
I hope so.
That'd be the best.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
because it seems like whatever we talk about, we end up living through, right?
Yes. So yeah. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
It is. Here's a great verse I want us to kick off with. Okay. It's a great verse for us to remember. It's in the Old Covenant, but it is at a time when the children of Israel are in their journey.
Yep.
Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. Here's a word from the Lord. Be strong and courageous. Don't be terrified or afraid of them, for the Lord your God is the one who will go with you.
Yep.
He'll not leave you or abandon you. I think that's a powerful verse, and coming off of this past year. In fact, we could actually say for all of us coming off of the last few years, since COVID, the world's just really changed on us. But God has been faithful through
Do it
all of the ups and downs.
Yeah, no, he showed himself at this church. You know, we realize we're very thankful for the fact we know, despite the ups and downs, we know there's a lot of churches that aren't here anymore, and there's a lot of churches that stagnated or at least dropped off substantially. The Lord, I mean, he's increased us, and we're very cognizant and thankful for that.
Yeah, and
we don't take that lightly at all. We really know and understand that that's purely the grace and the favor of God, and we also all realize it is completely His. We can't take any of the credit. Dude, I'm just a redneck from Arkansas. There's literally no reason for people to even want to follow anything I say. I mean, he's not quite as redneck from Kentucky, but we know our faults and our warts. So we know this thing that's going on here is of God. But we've experienced ups and downs. I mean, whether or not we're seeing great things, we also have seen some valleys.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, when we look back and we look at the statistics of the year, we say, wow, what an incredible year. Numbers are up across the board. We've seen more people come to faith in Jesus through our ministries in 22 than in any time in our history. More baptisms than any time in our history. We saw incredible positives in that area. 100%. And I think it's easy to stop and look back and say, oh, look at all those blessings. They're doing everything right. And not realize there's the other side of the story too. As many mountain peaks as we had that many or more valleys to go through. And yet through it all, God's been extremely faithful. And that happens in the church, but also happens in our personal lives too, right? It does.
100%. Yeah. We know you have experienced a lot, especially towards the end of the year. And then all of us, I know on staff as a staff or family, and then just talking to our individual people within our congregation, we realize, man, we get to celebrate with them whenever they're on their mountaintops, and we get to help pull them through their valleys. And the same thing's true on staff. I know we've, as in my family, we've had a ton of ups and downs. And this year, actually, for the Deloach household, to be honest, was fairly up. I mean, it really wasn't a big, we didn't have a ton of downtime as far as like major downward slopes, too many valley moments. So I'm thankful for that.
It's because our family took your
blunt of the road. Don't worry, we had our fun times where it wasn't always perfect. And that's where you find out where your faith is, though,
That's what it is.
And you
see the value of a spiritual family.
100%. Yep.
Because this past year was incredibly difficult for our family. I believe sometimes God allows your family not to go through as much because then you guys were there for us.
Somebody has to be able to be stable.
That's going to flip back around. 1 year it's going to be the other way around.
And, that's exciting.
Well, I don't mean that in negative.
I know that.
I mean the community of believers, and the reason why God did not call us to be Lone Ranger Christians. We need to be a part of a community. And if you're not a part of a community, please become a part of a spiritual community somewhere. Because we need accountability. We need encouragement. When one is down, we need someone that can pick us up. So, our family, we experienced some great highs. I had another granddaughter born. Savannah came into the world now. Now at Christmas and holidays gets really noisy in the Vault household with all these grandbabies coming around. We saw some wonderful moments like that. We also, though, had more than our fair share, it seemed like this year, of difficulties. We had the normal things like everybody else. You have your sicknesses, you have, financial troubles or whatever you've got. This year was a little weird. We had everything from crazy auto accidents to blown engines of cars that were only 2 weeks old to 6 family members pass away.
That was a
short amount of time. And the last one just a few weeks ago being my mother. So,
and that's, we know that's tough. I mean, because your mom, you were real close to your mom. She lived with you guys, or at least in this area for some time.
We moved her here to Missouri about 8 years ago to kind of help her as her health was deteriorating. And, she still had her independence, but we were there daily, helping.
Yeah, and that's a stress. I mean, as much as you love somebody, that's added stress. I mean, I know in this case, Lisa, his wife, became, because of her more flexibility. She did a lot of that.
Yeah, she became mom's primary caregiver.
She did, yeah. And so this wasn't just
I became mom's primary problem solver.
You did,
yeah.
And so for Pastor Chris and his family, it was more than just Chris, and just was the only one going through it. Lisa had it,
sure.
and then even the kids had it. And so it was a trying time for them. We had to sit back and kind of watch it happen. And so it wasn't necessarily the most pleasant thing to watch, but we knew, but you will be proud of one thing. Both of them were above the fray, because a lot of people, trust me, whenever things go haywire like that, it's real easy to lose you lose all the things that you've attained, all your spirituality kind of goes out the window. Because trust me, I've seen people who become negative and become argumentative and become all those things whenever things aren't quite going their way, especially to the level that it was for you guys. But I don't think the point of this whole time we're talking together is about the negativity and about the down. It's about it is about the valleys, because valleys is where a friend Zach's over here manning the audio for us, and we've had this conversation a bunch. He had a tough, interesting year, would be a better word for it, and so the thing about the valley is that's where the fruit grows.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah,
that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, mountaintops. Everybody wants that mountaintop life, right? But mountaintops are barren. I mean, there's clear air there. There's clarity there. So when we get to our mountaintops, man, that's when we get to see. That's when God gives us vision, and we see forever. We see the next mountaintop.
Right.
The thing is, though, you can't sustain there. You can't stay there, because you run out of air, and there's nothing there to sustain you. Nothing growing there. So you're going to have to go back into another valley. And it's when you're in those valley times when God piles on the fruit. And so, and that's what sustains you on your next ascension up that mountain. And so you can do one of two things in a valley. You can attain fruit, learn from it, grow from it, allow the Lord to speak to you and through you, or you can sulk and become sullen, and you can just hang down there by a creek and just basically roll over and die if you want to. Or you can lift up your eyes, allow the Lord to carry you right up that next mountaintop. Yeah. And we hope, and that's our prayer, is that this year you learn how to sustain yourself, or allow the Lord to sustain you in the valleys, as well as how to handle yourself and what to look for when you're on that mountaintop. Because you can waste your mountaintop experience. You can. And that'd be terrible, because I promise you, I would love to say we're going to live mountaintop to mountaintop on the regular. Yeah. But unfortunately, you're going to spend probably, my guess, more than half your time in a valley, and which is fun, in some form of that valley, and not the very bottom necessarily, but you're always somewhere in the journey, somewhere in that transition,
or you're having to climb the mountain, or you're in the middle of the valley.
So don't hate your valley.
Right.
And don't forsake your mountaintops. Yeah. And so when you're at that high, man, recognize it. Like right now, we need to be really
capture the moment.
Capture it. And we need to learn from it, because there's vision there. There's clarity at that mountaintop. And so you don't have vision's usually a little harder to come by when you're in the valley. That's what you lose, because you can't see anything but the next mountain is right in front of you. You can't see past it, can't see around it. Boom, you see a mountain. And so, but while you're there, though, you're given all of that fruit, or that information, or that whatever it is God's trying to pour into you to allow you to make that journey up to the next mountaintop. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the power of this discussion. Yeah, as we're leaving a year, going into a new year, no matter where you're at on the journey, if 22 was your filled with more high points than low points, or low points versus high points, doesn't matter where you're on the journey. Yep. God said in his word, the scripture we read a moment ago, I will go with you.
Yep.
And we do not have to fear. If we can keep that mindset, understanding whatever we have to experience, and to understand you can't live on that mountain, as you said. We're going to spend probably more time coming off of a mountain, in the valley, or trying to climb the next mountain than we actually are on the mountain peak. If we can keep that in our minds, it would keep us from becoming so frustrated, discouraged along the journey.
Yep.
And then capture those mountain peak moments. Let that vision propel you through the valley, but while you're in the valley, understand that's really where you're maturing.
Yep, it is. 100%.
That's where you're eating the fruit.
Yep. Yeah, and again, I think a lot of people, they despise the valley, and and the biggest thing I think, when you can't hear, you don't feel like you can hear, we're going to be talking about that this coming year.
Yeah.
We don't feel like you can hear the voice of God or see or have any clarity. Frustration, mistrust, doubt, all those things come into play. And that is where having a family of believers is important.
It is. It's so
if you're important. Somewhere like online right now or listening, and you do not have a church family, that is the importance of a church family as much as anything else, is to help you through your valley moments. And again, like we just said, most of your Christian walk will be in the transition points. It's not going to be on those high moments. And so you really need to always surround yourself with somebody that's strong, who, because guess what? They have probably been through that exact same valley that you find yourself in right now. And they can help guide you and mentor you as you journey up that next point, that next hill.
I think that's a great principle, and I believe it's Paul.
Yep.
I believe it's in Corinthians. He actually refers to God helping you through your struggles so that you may be able to help others with the same help you've received. And that's part of the beauty of being a spiritual family, going up the mountain, down in the valley, and sharing that with other believers and helping them along the journey.
It reminds me of we did a story years ago, video story for one of our messages, and we have a fellow here named Terry, and he shared, Terry Venables is his name. He shared a phrase. I think he learned it from our youth pastor at the time. God never wastes a hurt.
Right.
And that stuck with me for a really long time.
Powerful.
It's a powerful expression. It's true. It's what you just said. There's anything you're going through is, if you're a Christian, if you're born again, if you're going through it, and learn from it. It's just as important for you to learn from it for your own good, so you don't go through it again, but it's also so you can reach out into somebody else's life and help keep them from going through the exact same thing.
Right.
Because I think that's as much as what we're called to do as anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's move on to one more verse that God helped me with through this year. One of them was Deuteronomy, as we shared. Another passage that I gained a lot of strength from on the Lord was Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 and 29. Here's what Jesus said. Jesus said, "Come unto me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest." I believe that's key.
Yep.
Jesus says, "I'll give you rest." Now, sometimes we think, okay, that means, I'm not going to stress anymore. I'm not going to have the problem anymore. It's not what happens at all. But he says, "I'll give you rest." Listen to the rest of the verse. He says, "Take my yoke. Take my yoke and learn from me, because I'm lowly and humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls." So we need one another along the journey.
Yep.
But then our faith also causes, at times, we just got to look up and see where our help comes from.
Yeah, we got to yoke up to the Lord. 100%.
Yoke up to the Lord. And let's talk about that just for a moment, because there was one point in 2022 that I was physically, emotionally, spiritually exhausted. And for the first time in 30 years of pastoring, I took a sabbatical.
Yep.
And it was only 5 weeks. I mean, some guys take much longer periods than that. Some people thought I was gone forever for being gone 5 weeks. But I took 5 Sundays.
Moses, you went up the mountain. Where are you now?
Yeah. It's a good thing you guys didn't bring out the golden calf while I was gone.
No golden calf while you were gone, I promise.
But I took off for 5 Sundays. I think it was 6 weeks, 5 Sundays, and traveled out west, traveled to different states, visited with other pastors, had a great time. Yep. Here's what I thought. Here's what I said to the Lord before my sabbatical. Lord, I don't want to come back the way I left.
Pointless.
But I got to say, the whole time I was gone, I kept waiting for the moment that I'd wake up and just be miraculously revived.
Yep.
Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. That never happened. I mean, even the Sunday I came back, I was ready to be back.
Yep.
But it wasn't like I was supernaturally revived. You know what I'm saying?
No.
And I think at that moment, my faith was, in this time off, God will give me the rest I'm looking for. Mm. And that's not what he says in this verse. It's not just about taking time off. Do we need to take time off? Absolutely. Am I against physical rest? Not at all. Jesus taught this to the disciples.
Yep.
But I believe there's a missing element a lot of times when we just say, I need to take some time. And it's in this line where Jesus says, take my yoke. Now, in the first century, the yoke was often referred to as the teaching of a rabbi.
Yep.
So you think about what Jesus said here, take my yoke. In other words, he was saying, take my word, take my teaching and learn from me, because my teaching, or I am lowly and humble in heart. And that's where you find rest for souls. And then, so of course I did scripture reading, I did prayer, but I did a lot of resting on my break. When I came back, I had to get back into the Word. I had to get back prepared for sermon series and leading the church into the fall.
You mean whenever you were gone on your sabbatical, God didn't lift all of those issues away? We still had things go on in the church world that only pastors understand. We still had those things.
I still was getting texts and emails.
You had, you still had cars that broke down after you got back. You still, matter of fact, your mother passed away after you got back. So, despite doing exactly what you thought the Lord said, you still had what changed? Then? Was it so? The circumstances didn't completely change. What changed?
No. I had to rediscipline my time to get up in the mornings and get back to something so basic, because we get so busy, right?
Yep.
To just turn off the phone and all the noise, and just with the scriptures open, prayer and reading the scriptures, and all of a sudden, that life began to come back into my soul.
Perspective,
getting back into the Word. And yes, physical rest is important, but with the physical rest, we must take time to get into the Word and just commune with the Father. And that's another reason why this next year, in the 2023, we're talking about getting to a point in our spiritual walk where we can just hear His voice. Because it brings rest.
Because you can't rest if you don't know. Right. And if you don't, you can't know if you don't hear. You got to hear. And I think one of the reasons we're going to emphasize it so much, we've talked about, over the years since I've been on staff here, we've talked about this same thing a few ways. We're going to emphasize it this year. And what that means is for you to be able to hear the voice of God for yourself, is the fact that, yes, you will hear. You need to hear from other people. We talked about when you're in the valley, you need other voices. You need clarity. You need those people to help you see. But you can't go into this thing. You can't be dependent on coming here on Sunday morning or listen to a podcast or whatever it is, however you get spiritually fed. That can't be your sole source of hearing God. Right. If it is, I promise you, you'll be malnourished as a Christian. You will not have clarity ever, not true clarity. Mm-hmm. You'll have other people's opinions, God given or not. It's still their opinion,
right?
And so you need to be able to lean on and trust on the voice of God. And before you can do that, though, you first got to know how to hear. You have to be able to hear and know it's not pizza or something, right? Because it could be pizza.
So here at CPC. In 2023, there's several new ventures, I want to say, that we're trying to employ here in our church with our ministries. This podcast is one of them, right? Talk to us about some of the other things that we got looking forward to, technology, ministry ventures to help our people to learn how to hear.
We recognize the fact that there's a lot of needs out there for our spiritual growth. There's a lot. We have all levels. We have people that have been in this thing called Christianity for 50 years. We got some who are very new. Their families weren't in it. They really have zero understanding. I know we have a brother here named Brent. We've used his example a million times. Sorry, Brent. But he was in his 30s and literally had never read the Bible before in his life. Never read one
verse before in his life,
I was an atheist till I was 33, but guess what? I knew large aspects of the Bible. It blows my mind. You can live right here in the Bible Belt and not know a single aspect of the Bible. Never picked it up, never read it. And so we know that. And we also know that everybody has different ways they learn and different ways they attain knowledge. And so we want to help point people in a proper direction, what we feel like the Lord emphasizes with our hearts as a culture here and as a community here, the things that are important here. So on our website, there will be resource pages, and what those things will help you do is they'll point you towards things like a podcast or a message series that we did on that subject matter. So if it's prayer, you'll have a little drop down. You can find it in prayer. And so if we have any external resources we want to provide you, like there's some really wonderful book out there or some other somebody else that we trust or we're in fellowship with. We'll put their links down there. We'll do whatever it is because it's not about us. It's about trying to help you understand more about your Father and hear the voice of the Lord. And so we want you to grow. We know there's all these different capabilities in that way. And so they'll be simple. There'll be some really basic things you can listen to and watch, from basically like even which Bibles we choose to read and which ones that we depend on. And then if you want to take that deeper, we'll take you deeper. You can learn why we have the Bible at all. Why is it here? How did it become what it is? So it'll put you all those different levels. So if you just need to know what we say, what we believe are the better versions or translations of the Bible for you to study, we'll have that, but we also have it for you guys who need that deeper, richer, in-depth knowledge. We'll break down canonology and all those wonderful things. It's going to take time. It's going to be a growth process with us as far as those resources. We're going to start shooting things like this regularly. You'll see them change a little bit as we get a little bit fine-tune everything that we're doing. And so you'll have the website, you'll have those resource centers, and on the website, that'll be a major thing. The YouTube page, you guys need to be checking out the YouTube page. All of this stuff will be there visually because you may be a visual learner. You may need to watch it while it's going on. I know for myself, and I think Chris is the same way, we like to listen to things. I'm a podcast guy. I listen to podcasts all the time. I can listen to a podcast while I mow the yard, while I lift weights, or whatever it is I'm doing. And you can listen to podcasts wherever while you drive down the road. You can't hardly watch a video when you ride down the road.
You're not supposed to.
But
not if you're in the driver's seat.
No, it's kind of weird. And so we want to have them make sure that they're in all different formats. But they'll all be right there on the website and over here in the next few weeks, actually. And so we'll start populating all of those things. And so we're really excited about that. I mean, it's beyond that where I think there's some other things we know, possibility of coming down, some special messages and different things. But yeah, we've got a lot of things that will be here as far as digital goes. And it's basically started. This is literally right now, if you're watching this, we are in the second week of January. And so you may be watching this in 2025 or something, but this is in
January 12th,
2023. I can't remember what day it was. And so it's January 12th, 2023, and it's literally the second thing we've shot.
Right.
And so this is the beginning of something we hope is a major resource for everyone.
Yeah, our goal is to come alongside you.
Yep.
We're going to help walk with you, whether you're on a mountain peak or down in the valley or somewhere in between, help you grow in your walk, grow in your faith. So stay with us. Keep checking out our resources at yourcpc.church, our YouTube page, our social media sites, because new content's going to just be coming out on a very regular basis as we're shooting it throughout the year. For me personally, I'm making some adjustments. So I have my podcast, the Pursuit Podcast. You can subscribe to it on any podcast platform. We'll continue to upload sermons, but we're also going to be uploading audio from some of these video shoots. And so it's going to become sermons as well as teaching opportunities and moments. My written blog, I still have that at chrisvault.net, but we're getting ready to, it'll be sometime in this year, we're going to merge it over. It'll
be pretty soon. Early in the part of the year, it'll merge over and be part of our, part of the CPC, yourcpc.church website. And you'll be able to find all of that. And generally, after you get past about the 2/3 point of the website, you'll see a running little tab that shows all of his most recent blogs and podcasts. And it won't just be like you just won't be hearing Darren or Chris. You're going to be hearing like from large portions of our staff teaching from the perspectives that they have. Like if we're talking about children, I mean, the only thing I can tell you about children is I had 4. That's what I can tell you. I raised them, did my best, and I can tell you probably a little more. But we have people in this church, Pastor Kevin and his daughter Faith, that's what they do. And so if somebody's going to talk about children, who better to get to them? Michael, same thing.
So we're going to be pulling in a lot of different voices. We're not building any one individual's kingdom. We're building the kingdom using all of our platforms. And so CPC is going to be a hub for you to come and to grow in your faith, and you'll want to share this with others. Make sure you hit the subscribe links on all this data. We're going to be doing some writing projects. I'm personally going to be working on some writing projects, hopefully coming out with some different writing projects, books, and so on pretty soon. Some other staff are doing some writing. So whether you're...
And we'll have some other blogs, other people's blogs besides just Chris. We'll have other things that will be written by other parts of our staff that will also populate down at the bottom of our website as we reopen it here in the next. It's open now, but it's going to be reconfigured. We call it a patch.
Sure.
It's going to be patched up here over the next couple of weeks. And then from there, you'll start seeing those things populate at the bottom. So make a regular habit of going to those two places, yourcpc.church and then the YourCPC YouTube page. Because, by the way, if you're on YouTube right now and you're watching
the Pursuit podcast.
And the Pursuit podcast.
Just throwing that in there.
Don't forget that one, Pursuit podcast. And so if you're on YouTube watching this, you can, anytime you want to, throw a comment down there. We appreciate actually if you would comment.
Sure.
It helps the algorithm out. So it lets YouTube know that you are interested in what we're doing. So shoot a comment down there, say, hey, or hey, you can subscribe too. That'd be a good thing. That always helps. The more you subscribe and give a thumbs up to whatever it is out there, it just helps. We're not going to beg. In fact, we're not going to even probably ask that much, but we will ask every once in a while, and just hope that you will support us. And because trust me, the more you participate in what we're doing online, the more you'll see it.
Yeah. One of my personal mentors went home to be with the Lord in 2022. One of the most absolute incredible spiritual leaders. I called him a modern day Apostle Paul, Ben Merrill, and not only me, he influenced thousands of pastors and church leaders over the years. But I had a privilege over the last several years to meet with him 3, 4, 5 times a year. And we'd take him to his favorite restaurant and sit down. I'd ask a couple questions and then shut up for 2 hours and just let the man talk, and I'd soak it in. That was all pre-COVID. After COVID, we didn't have a chance to get together very often. But what an incredible man of God. And every day, Ben Merrill got up and prayed the same prayer. And he would pray these 2 words. And it's kind of the theme of what I'm setting personally for my own prayer life and what we're trying to do here at CPC for you in this new year. But he would say, Lord, give me wisdom and give me influence. And that's what we want to do. We want to help with wisdom from the Word of God, come alongside you and help influence you for the kingdom of God. Live your life on the Lord. In fact, before we wrap up, I just want to bring that challenge out to you. You know, we've talked about the great adventure. This podcast, this vlog is actually called The Great Adventure Continues, you know, if you want to say it that way.
It is.
What about you? Where are you at in your walk with God right now? Coming off of this past year, starting a new year, what are the priorities you're going to set? You know, we've talked to you about some of the ventures that we're going to try to take to walk alongside of you, but no one can choose the depth of your walk with Christ but you. Will you commit yourself to hear the voice of God, to grow closer to Christ? Maybe you are watching this video right now or listening to this podcast and you've never made that initial decision to become a follower of Jesus. How about now? Now is the time to truly surrender the reins of your life over to Christ, surrender your family over to Christ, and follow the path he has for you. It'll be a path worth taking. I'll say that.
Amen. Yeah, no, you mentioned, he said he seeks for wisdom and for influence, right? Right. Because there's a lot of people out there with great wisdom, but if you don't have any influence, which really comes back to your character, and so you won't have any influence. If you don't have any influence, you can have all the wisdom in the world, but there's nobody taking that wisdom. Yeah. And if you could have a lot of influence, but if you don't have any wisdom, you're leading people astray. Right. And so you have to have both, or you're doing nothing. And so that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, wisdom and influence, I think, is key for us here at CPC because we have a saying here in our church. We want God to do something so amazing in and through us that only He can get the credit for. Amen. It's not about our platform. It's not about our kingdom. It is all about His.
It is.
Got any final words?
I think we pretty much wrapped it up with the wisdom and influence. I'll be praying that one for a while.
Yeah. Won't you make it your prayer too? Thank you for joining us. Subscribe and check out our next video as it comes out soon.